Swamiji, kindly unmute yourself. We are not able to hear you.
Okay, okay, I'm so sorry. So we were doing in the last period. We had gone till the verse number 29, and so we would start from the verse number 30th. But to just put it in perspective, the Acharya is kind of sort of goading us towards the truth by mentioning Swadehe Shobhanam Shantam Purusakyam Sasammatam King Murkha Sunyamatmanam Dehatitam Karoshibho is asking this question. First, he asked a few questions as to the irrelevance of trying to confuse the body as Atman, as soul. Then he mentioned, of course, what the self is in a few verses, which we have already done. And now he's refuting in the verse number 29 any temptation on the part of the sadhaka on the lines of Charvaka, because it's quite possible that a person may be influenced by different schools of thought. Like you listen to somebody and he makes fun of sadhana, or he makes fun of whatever is written in the Vedas. We have a lot of interesting people on the media these days, and they say different things, and everybody has a freedom of choice, freedom of expression. But the wise one shouldn't be influenced by it. That is what the Acharya is explaining here. And what is he saying? He's saying Swadehe Sovanam Santam. It's all obvious, everybody knows. That particular Nishkriya, Nishkala, Nirabhasa, Sadrupa, that is Atman. And it is verily present in all of us. It is Swayam Prakasa. It is the light of the lights. And this is not physical light. He had already explained in one of the previous verses that the Atma Jnana, the Jnana Loka, the light of the luminosity of awareness and consciousness is different from physical light. Physical light can light up one corner of the house, but once we have self awareness, it lights up the whole consciousness. It doesn't leave out one corner of your consciousness. That is what different upasanas do. They might solve some problem, but the holistic emancipation of ourselves, our emancipation in a very holistic sense, has to be premised on a complete transformation of consciousness. Transformation essentially means removal of ignorance. It's not that consciousness is like a mass of some biochemical substance and then therefore by taking some medicine you can transform it. No, not in that sense. Is essentially discarding this whole cloak which we call our wisdom, which is a very faulty way of looking at the world. And he's saying you drop it, then this avarana and vikshepa, not being able to see the truth and seeing the something else as non-truth as truth. When both these factors affecting our self-awareness are removed, then we are verily established in self-awareness. He's saying, why are you, when this beautiful idea of the self, which is described in so many words in the Upanishads, in Bhagavad Gita, in so many spiritual texts, why are you jumping? Why are you reducing yourself to follow the footprints of Charvaka and confuse yourself either as the body or follow the footprints of other people who confuse the self as non-self because they have the anatmavada in the Buddhism. So he's saying, why are you confusing that the way to liberate yourself is to accepting Swarupa Sunyata. That is what the Buddhists say. That by our own nature we don't exist. Nothing exists as such. That is what is Sunyavada. Everything is interdependent. But the Vedanta say who is saying this, there has to have some substratum, there has to be some foundation. And that is the minor difference. Otherwise, both are non dualists. So he's saying, why are you doing this? That was the verse number 29th. Why are you doing it? That is how the Buddhist view was kind of refuted. Not refuted, but he's asking, why are you falling prey to that sort of a notion? When verily the Upanishads very beautifully describe, you yourself are aware that even in deep sleep, you are waking up and you're saying, I had a lovely sleep. That means the presence of the self in all three states, Jagrada, Swapna, and Susupti, is evident to you through analysis, through observation. Why shouldn't you understand the presence of the self? then the student or the Purva Paksha might have a feeling, okay, I would not say that there is no self, but all that I see is the body. So let's have a deal. Let's accept the body as the self. And that view, that temptation also have to be removed by the Acharya. Therefore, in the verse number 38, he's saying, Swatmanam shrunumurkhatvam shrutya yuktya cha purusham dehatitam sadakaram sudurdarsham bhavadrisaihi. Do you know what is the question to which this sloka is being provided as an answer? The question is posed by the great, Vidyaranya Muni, the Tikakara. Nanyu sunyavadinaha eva abhava apattehe sunyamastu. You are saying that Atma's abhava, the absence of the Atma, is not verified because even in deep sleep, I wake up and say that I had a good sleep. I am remembering some experience of happiness in deep sleep. Okay, I agree with you. However, so it will not be, it's not sunya. Atma is not equivalent to emptiness. Agreed? Parantu atmanah dehati tatve. However, there is no proof whatsoever that there is something beyond this body. I cannot see it. Dehati tatve pramana bhavat. There is no proof. There is no pramana. There is no proof whatsoever. There is no justification. Deha eva atma syat. Why can't we have a deal that this body itself is atma? No problem. We are happy. What Charvaka says, there is no spirit or self other than this assemblies of different karanas, the chatur, bhutatmaka, because they don't accept akasa. They would say that if you take betel nuts and you take lime and you take betel leaves and whatever spices and you start chewing, red color comes. Red color is not there in lime or betel leaves or the betel nuts, but you chew them together, red color is produced. Similarly, the body mind complex, they would say the mind of the self is essentially an aspect of the brain or the body. The brain is a part of the body. So consciousness is an aspect of the brain. There is nothing independent of the brain. There is a whole lot of debate in the West on this. So the pro-brain philosophers are very close to our Charvaka Mata. He would say that very self beyond this body. Therefore, what he's saying, let's accept this body itself is Atma. He is now refuting this. Bho Murkha, oh my fool, oh my foolish friend. Dehatmavadin Charvakaha, oh my dear friend Charvaka, why don't you listen? Tvam Swamatmanam Sukhyam Atmanam Purusham Dehatitam Dehatiriktam Shrutyat. There is Shruti and Yukti. You can logically prove that the mind is not the body. And you can also refer to the statements in the Upanishads, which verily, stand this testimony. They kind of stand this testimony, and they justify, they support this argument that body and mind not in the Western sense. By mind, I'm referring to the consciousness in the Indian sense, in the Eastern philosophical sense. It's pure consciousness. He's saying they are two different things. Why? So first he gives Shruti Pramana. What is the Upanishadic statement which verifies this argument, this viewpoint? What does he say? Tasmadava etasmad anna rasamayad anya antaraha atma. This is mentioned. This is mentioned in the Upanishad. And therefore, because it is mentioned in the Upanishads, you cannot accept when he's saying tasmadva etasmad. This Atma is different from this body. Anna rasamayad. This sarira, this body we have, this Thula sarira, Annamaya Kosha, is born out of Panchagrita Panchamahabhuta, born out of these 5 elements. And the self is different from this. That is what the Upanishad says. That is the Shruti Pramana, testimonial evidence is giving. And then, Punaha Yuktya, then he gives some logical arguments. What is that argument? Ekasmin kartru karma virodha. He's saying, look, if the body is the self, okay, I would agree. Do you agree that there would be a difficulty in understanding subject object dichotomy if you refer to the body as the self? And what is the problem? The student will ask, the defense lawyer will ask. The question is like this: can you lift yourself? If I say you lift yourself, how will you lift yourself? Someone else can lift you. Lift your mind? Yes, I will try to lift my mind. Lift your hand? Yes, I'm lifting my hand. That means I am different from my hand, so I'm lifting my hand. Now, sometimes I refer to my body as Mama Sariraha. This is my body. Whose body? My body. So there is a I which is different from what I am referring to as my body. We have done that in Bhagavad Gita at great lengths as to why the self is different from your mind, your intelligence, your body, your thought, your actions. Why? Because if you are acting, the actions are performed by you. So obviously you cannot be actions. And if I say my thoughts, my buddhi, that is me, then I would say sometimes we say that I had lost my intelligence. My mind wasn't in the right place. We say that. I couldn't properly answer that question in the examination because my mind was not in the right place. I took a wrong decision. That is how we refer to our erroneous judgments. That means our judgments and judgment making mind are different from that grand I that we are referring to as ourself. So that is kartri karma virodha. There is a difference between the object and the subject, the doer and the done, the person who owns the body, the owner of this body and the body. There is a difference. Therefore, he's saying this is the logical argument why body cannot be the self. You're saying, I can see my body. My body isn't very well. Somebody else who is saying this. It cannot be reduced, this body. And then he's saying, what is that self then verily? He's saying, Deha titatve kimakara atma ityataha sadakara iti. What is that atma? Okay, now describe. I can see the body. Now you're talking about atma. Give me some proof and show me where it is. He's saying, look here. You have this sadakara pratyaya. Remember the long discussion we had on the verse number 16 of the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. That anubhuti, which you have asti, asti, there is a pot, there is a horse, there is a pen, there is a pencil, there is. That is common to all this. Pen, pencil, horse, dog, whatever, they are changing. That particular asti vachaka is, that is not changing. Similarly, saying there is asti iti, that particular pratyaya. Hey, when you are referring, it is there. That itself, that is sadakara. Okay, it is different from the nyaya paribhasa, the nyayaka definition of what is satta. Satta, they will say, is one attribute of all the objects of the dravyas, materials. That is satta. So, guna, karma, and kriya. Qualities, okay, and karma, actions, and then kriya and guna and dravya. Dravya is any material object. And this particular thing, the satta, that isness, is one thing which exists in all three of them. That is how they define it. But here, sat means sanghata, sanpata. There is a object, there is a glass, there is a book. That isness is universal to everything. We are not limiting. It is the dravya. You see, the difference between Nyaya and Vedanta is like this. They would say, isness belongs to this object, the Nyaya philosophers. Isness is an aspect of this object. The Vedanti will flip the whole argument. He will say, in fact, this very highlighter exists in that grand isness, that sat, that satta, which is that Suddha Brahman, that is the adhisthana of everything. So the objects and qualities and everything, these are existing. The foundation is that isness. So exactly the opposite. Now coming back here, So he's saying that sadakara, that is one definition, how to know. Okay, akas. And then saying evam vidha asti chet kutana drishyate. Now the question comes back. Oh, really? The Atma is there? Why can't I see this? That's a very valid question. You are saying there is an Atma beyond this body. I can see the body. You are refuting it cannot be the self. Fair enough. Show me where is the Atma and why I cannot see it. He's mocking the student for asking this futile question by saying, do you know, my dear friend, Su Dudarsam is very difficult to see. Durdasam is very difficult. Why? Bhavadrishehi, for a person like you. It's like, you know what? A student who is a fairly good student enters into a very higher class where some advanced theorems are being discussed. And he's asking questions from his perspective. Hmm? And then he enters into the classroom. The teacher says, it's not like this, it's not like that. And he challenges it. So how is it possible? Because he has understood, his understanding of physics is at a particular level, Newton's laws. Now, suddenly he's attaining a class on quantum mechanics. He finds it all Greek and Latin. Now, the teacher says, okay, you have some problem. In what class you are? No, I'm studying Newton in physics. I know a lot of physics. It's okay. You complete your coursework. As you progress, you would be able to make sense of what we are discussing in this classroom. The Vedanta Acharya is now telling Bhavadrishehi. Etadrisa means like this. Bhavadrisa means for a person like you, for people like you, it's very hard to see where is the Atma. Why, sir? He's saying, look here, you don't have Shraddha or Vishwasa. You don't have goodwill, you don't have faith, you don't have any opening towards the scriptures. This is not a very religious, exclusivist kind of a statement. He's saying, look here, you have to cultivate these ideas. You have to get into these sciences of the self. If you want to understand it, you have to enter that coursework. Without doing that foundational coursework, how would you be able to understand it? And therefore, obviously, it will not make any sense. So here in Rishikesh, there are certain advanced Vedantic texts, and the Acharya, very compassionately and very, in a very gentlemanly way, would say, so if a new guy who comes and barges into the class and he sits and he would say, okay, you are welcome, you can sit here, but you will not be able to understand anything. I'm just telling you this is an advanced text, because he will not be able to go back to the basics in each and every class. You have to do the homework, because as you advance, there are certain advanced concepts which are introduced. This idea of the self is not the body, is sadakara, is a little too subtle for a materialistic mind. That is what the Acharya is saying. There is nothing else. There is no mockery. He's essentially saying that we have to raise our consciousness. We have to further cultivate the concepts and this whole training in Vedantic understanding. Once we are ready for it, and the adhikaras are mentioned in a great way, we would be able to grasp the secrets. Next verse, 31st. He's now explaining what is that. In the verse number 31st, there is a small introduction. Tadeva aha. He's explaining now what is the self in the verse number 31st. Aham sabdena vikhyatah eka eva stitah parah stulastvanicatam praptah katham syadeha kah puman. How can this body be the self? That is the 4-5 verses. Now we'll repeat this. How can the body be the self? It's a refutation of equating the body as the self. These are the questions. Aham sabdena. What is this aham? Aham. I. I'm a man. I'm a woman. I'm a horse. I'm a dog. I'm handsome. I'm powerful. I'm rich. I'm wise. Aham. Leave out the predicate part. What is common to all these statements? There is some kind of a self-awareness. In Vedanta, they give you another beautiful example to drive home the point. When we are in deep sleep and our sleep breaks, the very first second when our sleep breaks, If it's an alarm clock, there's a very quick connectivity. You know you have to catch a flight or a train, you have to attend a class, you have to study, or you have some assignment, so you wake up. It's time to wake up. You reluctantly wake up, even you are tired. But normally, you just think your sleep suddenly breaks. You must have experienced it. What are you aware of in the first microsecond of it? You are just aware of yourself, not of yourself as X or Y or Z. Your sleep just breaks. Then suddenly you are about to go back to sleep and you remember, oh my God, I have to do that. We may go, okay, so it's the first, the alarm bell rings and you wake up, and then you are about to go back to sleep. You're aware of yourself, you want to go back to sleep, and then other things come into your mind, all the attributes, responsibilities. Oh my God, I have to do that. That's how I had given the calling bell or the alarm bell. Then you wake up. The details come into you a little later, a few microseconds later. Now, that aham pratyaya, I am, that minimal self awareness, aham pratyaya alambana, that self is referred to as aham aham. I am, not the details. Now, in Vedanta, to make it very easy for you, I had given one easy way to understand the self and the kutastha and all that. So there are four levels of reality. One is the Mahakasha, the vast space of this universe. Then imagine the Meghakasa or Abhrakasa, the sky which are reflected in the clouds, the dark clouds. There is water in the clouds, and they also reflect those tiny molecules or atoms of water. They also reflect the sky, and that is called Abhrakasha, reflected. And then third, you have a Ghatakasa. You have a pot, a container, and the space inside it. There is also Akasa inside it. That is Ghatakasa. And imagine it's filled with water, and then the sky and the moon and other things are getting reflected on the water surface. That is Jalakasa. So that Jalakasa is real for us. That is the Ahankara. That is the Jiva. That is what is our body mind consciousness with which we are operating. But there is a self we do not see, which is Ghatakasa. Because it's filled with water, you cannot see the space inside the pot. That is the easiest way to unravel the secret. So the Ghatakasa is that kutastha in you, that self in you, the self in us that we cannot see because it's filled with water. Because the self is kind of submerged with our manabuddhi chitta ahankara, the antakarana. So we are only being aware of our antakarana, the body mind complex, as reflected in our buddhi or consciousness. That limited consciousness, which is kind of the contoured by, is kind of defined by our ahankara, our ego self. That's all that we are aware of, our ego self. The real self is Ghatakasa, just below that. We cannot see this. And then this particular ego self or whatever is reflecting the whole sky. So that's Chaitanya, that's the grand consciousness. That's the Brahman, the Mahakasa. Abhrakasa is comparable with Ishvara. Okay? So the Akasa reflected in these tiny particles are compared with all our vasanas because he is the collective. With all our karmas and our vasanas, he is creating the samsara. The water comes down through rain from the clouds. So he's like Ishvara, is a comparison. That is the Meghakasa or Abhrakasa. Once you accept this particular formulation, very easy to understand. What is he referring to here as self? Is referring to the Ghatakasa, the Kutastha, the self, the Pratyak Chaitanya. This Pratyak Chaitanya or space inside that pot is not different from the grand sky, from the grand universe. It's one, but it's defined by the contours of that particular pot. That is how it's called Pratyagatma, the Pratyak Chaitanya. That is a minor difference between Atma and Pratyagatma, essentially one, but defined in different ways. Upadhi Bhedat, because Upadhis are different. So he's saying Ahang Sabdena Vikhyata is very well known. Eka Eva. Eka means why? There are not many. Desa Kala Vastu Paricheda Sunya. Self is one. Then Pratyagatma, we are all different. Yeah, Ghatakasas are different. Akasa is only one. These ghatakasas, the spaces inside different pods, appear to be different. And there is a particular way called reflectionism or Pratibimbavada or Vivaranavada. They would say the one sun and there are 1,000 pods filled with water and 1,000 suns are appearing. In one pot you have green water, the sun appears a little green. In one pot you have red water, the sun appears a little red. But sun has no color. So with our papa punyas, our karmas, our sanskaras, we are different personalities. The personality is the surface of that pot filled with water, that is our antakarana, our papa punya, our karma, our sanskara. That is how the sun, it is reflected, that same, the sun, which is not having any attributes other than being bright, it's assuming different colors, then the water surface moves and the sun appears as if the sun is moving. Sun is not moving, the water surface is moving. That is how they explain it. Like you can look at the sun getting reflected if you sit next to a large water mass, a kind of a lake or something, on a summer afternoon, because of the wind, you have small ripples on the water surface. And you watch the sun, you'd see the sun is kind of dangling as if it's kind of swimming. It's moving, but it doesn't move. That is the reflection that is moving. That is how they explain it. So ahang sabdena vikhyatah eka eva stitaha. That is one verily, paraha, and is beyond all that we see immediately. And beautifully he's explaining eka eva stitaha. And then he's saying sthula deha, the difference between the atma and the sthula deha is, he's explaining it. Vikhyata ekava stitaha, atma is one, and that is beyond all that we see. What about the atma? Why the body cannot be atma? Sthula deha tu anekatam praptaha. Your body, there are too many. My body, your body, her body, their bodies. Bodies are different. Bodies are many. We are 8 billion people on earth, or maybe more. We do not know if they are human beings. Now, the advanced cosmology says that billions of light years away, we may have a solar system exactly like this. We may have people talking exactly at this time. We may have another Vedanta satsang happening in some other, universe. We do not know. It's a multiverse. So then, therefore, he's saying, stulastu anekatam praptaha, stula deham. This particular body can have many. Katham syad dehaka puman. When we know Atma is one, Upanishads have told us that one becomes many. The body is, you have different bodies. Self is one. Within the contours of different bodies, we ascribe as if, we presume as if consciousnesses are different. My consciousness is different from your consciousness. We talk like that. But there is one consciousness. All of us are actually one. But we appear as different because of our own sanskaras and our vasanas and all that. That is one refutation. Then he would further argue on that point in the verse number 32. What is the point he will now bring in? What we had discussed a little earlier. Kartru karma virodhaha. You can see your body, and it is definitely different from the self. That he is mentioning here. Aham drashtutraya siddho deho drishyataya stitaha mamayamiti nirdesat katham syadeha kaha puman. I am drashta. There is a beautiful book called Drik Dishya Viveka. It's also known as Vakya Sudha. It's a beautiful book. Some people say it's written by Sankaracharya. Some people say it's written by Vidyaranya Muni, who is the commentator on this text. So he's saying, Drik Drishya, the Drik Chaitanya, the seer, the perceiver is real. What is perceived is a picture. What is the best example? We don't have to go too far. Think about our dream state. In our dream state, you see a jungle, or you see a cricket match, you see two teams playing, you are one of them, right? And there is a commentator, the people playing, and there is a stadium, there's a sky, suddenly it rains. Everything that you see in the dream, is it different from you? What is real in this whole thing? Only you are real. This is whole thing an imagination and a creation of yours. Similarly, the drishya is different from you, and drishya is not true. The seer, yeah, of course, yeah. That Chaitanya through which you see everything, that is real. Therefore, he's saying, Aham drashtutaya siddhaha. I am the seer, and that is established. That can be verified, that can be proved. Deha drishyataya sthitaha. The body is an object of my perception. It's drishya. That is what I am able to see. I say that I have become thin, I have become a little too overweight or healthy, right? We mentioned I am having a little temperature, I'm having a little cold or a cough. These are attributes of the body. That is drishya. They can be perceived. And I am the perceiver. Therefore, he's saying, Mama ayam iti nirdesat. How do you say that? How do you prove it? He's saying, look, I say this is my body. This is my body. I'm referring to it. This is who is the guy who is referring? That is somewhere the self. And I'm referring to the body. He's saying, Mama ayam iti nirdesat. This is the proof that I'm being able to refer to my body as this is mine. Obviously, it cannot be me. What is mine is not me. Katham sya deha kaha puman. Deha kaha deha. So that is the ka pratyaya and swartyakan. So absolutely, there is no difference between deha and deha kaha in Sanskrit here. How can this body be the self? That is the refutation he's mentioning. Verse number 32. Is there anything he's mentioning? Mama iti. Mama ayam deha iti ghatavat. Ghatadivat suya sambandhitaya nirdesad vyavaharat. So what he's trying to say is, you are being able to see the ghata, pata, everything, your body. Can the ghata, can the object, this highlighter, I'm being able to see this highlighter. Can the highlighter see me? Can the highlighter see itself? It has no consciousness. You are seeing the highlighter, you are seeing your body. And the body definitely, of course, the body heals and there is consciousness in every aspect of it, but these are all minor attributions and we are kind to sort of understand them as if they are, manifold, but they are all part of that universal grand consciousness. All of us, our consciousness. And if there is consciousness also in ourselves, we are not denying it. It's all everywhere. It's one grand thing. It appears as manifold. He's saying, therefore, it's very obvious the body cannot be itself. And then he's sort of extending this argument in the verse number now 33. And this is another argument as to why the self is different from the body. What does he say in this verse number 33? Aham vikarahi nastu deho nityam vikaravan iti pratiyate sakshat katham sya deha kaha puman. Aham vikarahinaha. You see, what is vikara? There are certain vikaras in Vedanta. And how do you make sense of them? Jayate, asti, vardhate, viparinamate, apakshiyate, vinasyati. These are 6 stages through which we all travel. Jayate, we are born. Asti, we stabilize. Vardhate, we grow up. Viparinamate, we get this prodhavastha. Vardhate, use, and then you marry, you have children, you become somebody who enters his 30s and 40s. Then you are on the wrong side of the 40s or 50s, apakshiyate. Slowly the hair start growing, your body loses the shine, you don't look as bright as you did when you were in your pink of health, in your 20s or in your late teens. You look like a different person. Once one of your close friends meets you when you were in 40s and he was your classmate when you were in college, he said, oh my God, you're so handsome, you're so beautiful. What do you look like? What have you done to yourself? I mean, you could just ask him or her the same question. What have you done to yourself? Actually, we are not doing anything to ourselves. It's time. There is this beautiful Buddhist story, but that is kind of everywhere in Eastern philosophy. It's also in Hinduism and Jainism and Buddhism. There's a beautiful story that apparently there is a person who falls into a well. So he gets hold of these air roots of these big banyan tree. He's, holding onto them and hanging into the well. Why? Because when he looks down, he finds there's a huge king cobra waiting for him to fall down so that it can bite him. It's curious, waiting for him to fall down. And then there is a tiger right on the walls, looking down. How can I get my food, my breakfast? So you have a tiger at the top of the well, looking down into the well because it has a prey there hanging on the air roots. And below the air roots, below you see maybe a python or a king cobra coiled up with his head raised, waiting for you to fall. Done? And then the story doesn't end there. You have, there is one white rat and one black rat, both are nibbling at and eating up the air root which you are holding on to and you are hanging. They are constantly, and that's getting thinner and thinner. After a few minutes, maybe half an hour or so, it might split in the middle and then you're going to fall. At this moment, there is a beehive on the top of, on the one of the branches of the trees, and from that beehive, there is some honey dripping down. And it's a very, very interesting thing. This honey is falling on you and you're tasting it and you say, oh my God, what honey, how sweet it is, how beautiful, how nice. That is life. What are these two rats, the dark and the white rat? Day and night. And they are taking the root, and the air root, which is the balance of your life, is kind of your support. Once it's gone, this whole body is going to fall to pieces. We're going to die. We are not going to die. The body is going to fall. The Sukshma Sarira will travel forward depending on Papa Punya. And this is the story we are trying to celebrate, whatever moment you have, which is a good thing. Truth of the matter is that what have you done to yourself? We are not doing anything to ourselves, but there is something called time, and we cannot escape it. So that does a lot of things. In that context, the vikaras, or the modifications of the body, are unavoidable. You cannot prevent the body from decaying. Of course, I mean, you have interesting stories like this South African guy who is now in his 60s. He looks like an 18-year-old guy, and now big fashion companies are trying to hire his services to, pose him as a model, hire him as a model. He has a good diet and he takes care of himself, but still he's not going to be immortal. There are going to be invisible changes. This teacher is now telling us here, aham vikara hinaha. The Atma is nirvikara, nirguna. We have read it. Why is nirvikara? It doesn't have a physical body. What is it going to change? Nirguna is not an object that it will have any qualities. Is nirguna, nirakara, nirvikara, niskriya. It cannot move. Why? Okay, show me a place where it can move. It's omnipresent. Where can it move? Does it have 1 inch space outside this grand universe? We are talking about the whole of this universe, or all the universes put together, not the material universes. The consciousness, which is the substratum of all these universes, there is no place where it can move. That is Atma. Therefore, it's nirvikara, niskriya, nirguna, niskala, nirmala, all that we have discussed. He's saying, vikara hinatu, I am that self. Dehatu, nityam vikaravan, always changing. All ever changing. This beautiful statement by Heraclitus, he said, you cannot jump into the same river twice because new water is flowing there. What you see as Ganges, after 2 seconds, a lot of new water have come in. It looks like one river. It's not one river. Deepasikhavat, the flame. It looks like one flame. That is what the Vijnanavadis of Buddhism argue, that everything is ever changing. It's in a constant flux. And so he's saying this body is ever changing, the self is non changing, is perennial. How can it be that? Iti pratiyate sakshat. I can see it myself. How do you see this? The teacher would smile and say, I remember when I was a little child. I remember the days when my mother gave me a gift and I was so happy, and a day when my mom shouted and I wasn't so happy. And then I was young and now I'm old. I haven't changed. That same guy is continuing to be here, but that guy is not the guy with the body. I'm talking about my consciousness. So even your mind changes, except for everything. The self, except for that, everything changes. The way you think, the way you understand, the way you behave, the way you respond. All these things are changeable, except the self. That is what I'm saying. So I can see Sakshat Pratiyate, I can see it myself. I don't need any books to understand this. Therefore, he's saying, Katham sya deha kapuman. How can I then confuse myself with my body? That is the verse number 33. Let's move forward. Now, the arguments he has given. Okay. Now he's going to go back to the Shrutis. He's going to go back to Upanishads to give some more advanced, more sophisticated arguments. The evidence from the scriptures in the verse number 34. What does he say there? Yasmat paramiti shrutya taya purusha lakshanam vininnitam vimudhena katham syadeha kaha puman. Yasmat param. Yasmat sarirat param. It's beyond this body. It's beyond the mind. Arnara samayat. He quoted above already. It's beyond the sthula sarira. There is Shruti Pramana, testimonial evidence given in the Upanishadic literature. Now he is quoting the Taittiriya Upanishad, verse 9 from the third chapter, 3.9 of the Taittiriya Upanishad. What he is saying here, Yasmat Param Iti Shrutya. The whole sloka is like this. Vidyaranyaji is now quoting here. Evam uktva dehat manoho vailakshanyam uktva. He has mentioned the body and the Atma are two different. Shrutyapi aha. He's saying, of course, I can also give you Shruti Pramana. Yasmaditi. And that verse is quoting. The whole sentence is taking. Yasmat param na aparam asti. Param and aparam. You know what? Param is karana, aparam is karya. There is no karya or karana. There is nothing behind it, nothing after it. It's not a moment in time. It's desa kala vastu paricheda sunya. That is the Atma. It is not limited by time, space, location, or its materiality. It's beyond all that. Therefore, what he says is, Yasmat param na param asti, kinchid yasmat na aniyo na yayo asti kaschid bruksha iva stabdo divi tishtati eka tena idam purnam purushena sarvam. I did the Sandhi Vicheda to make it easier to understand. Saying there is neither beyond this, there is no karya or karana. First thing is that kinchit, anything. And he's saying yasmad na aniyo. There is nothing smaller than this. And there is nothing bigger than that. You can imagine of anything bigger or smaller if the Atma had a physical aspect to it. The self is not a physical thing. So they say it is subtler than the subtlest and larger than the largest. Why are they being able to say this? Because this Atma is Atisukshmatvar. It's not a physical thing, pure consciousness. Even if you go by the Western formulations about what is consciousness, they are talking about brain waves, they would mention about it. They would use this word called energy, frequency, waves. Remember, these are descriptions of some material reality. Consciousness is an aspect of the brain, is a material reality. So here we are talking about that luminosity in Vedanta. This luminosity is different from the brain. And that is the substance of this whole universe on which everything else is appearing, is supported by that substrata, that Chaitanya, Satchidananda Swarupa. Therefore, he is saying there is nothing larger than this, nothing smaller than this. There is nothing, anything which is a product of it or anything is a cause of it, neither a cause nor an effect, because anything which is a cause or an effect becomes anitya. Anything which is a karya rupa cannot be permanent. It's a product, so how can it be permanent? So therefore, this Atma Jnana is not a product of our sadhana. You are already mukta, you will realize it by removing ajnana. This is a different language. We are not saying that you're going to get mukti like you get a house, like you get a good person who becomes your friend, like you get some anubhava by watching a movie or a cricket match. You have that happiness, the state of mind. The Atma Jnana is none of these. These are not an aspect of our emotional state, our intellectual state, because these are pancho koshatita. That is how the Shastra leads us, neti neti, not this, not this. So we have a few formulations of what the self, and then we refute these formulations of the self, and then where we remove everything what remains, that I. That I is not that ahankara ego self, that grand I, the little I becomes the grand I. And that I is without any predicates. That is a subject without any predicates. That encompasses the whole universe. And that is our grand self. That is how we travel from the particular to the universal. From being an individual, from being a man or a woman, we become that pure consciousness. That is how in the Vedanta, ultimately, we don't recognize gender or caste or class or creed, even animal or human. No, we don't recognize anything. Ultimately, everything, the foundational truth, the ultimate reality is pure consciousness. You cannot say the pure consciousness of a girl is different from the, you can say the mind of a girl, the psychology of a girl is different from the psychology of a man. It's a limited concept. You're talking about certain formulation. What is the purity, the pure substance behind all this? These are all still the jalakasha, the surface of that water filled in a container where something is getting reflected. That is not the pure space inside that container. The pure space inside a green container, red container, black container is just space. The pure consciousness, which encompasses a girl or a boy or a man or a third gender, whatever words you use, is just space, is pure consciousness. That is what he's mentioning here. He's saying, Kanchit, Bruksha iva stabdo divi. Like in the Akasha, just imagine there is a tree, it doesn't move anywhere. It's unruffled. It cannot be moved. It cannot be disturbed. Divi. And that tishtati ekaha. And that one, that Atma, by one, we are not trying to limit it because it's not about a number. We are not imagining anything beyond this. Neha nanaste kinchara, there's nothing beyond it. It's too grand to allow another number called 2, 3, 4. No. Ekavatisti. Tena idam punnam purushena sarvam. That verily encompasses, permeates, and all this is filled by that. There is no location, no space, no time where this pure consciousness isn't there. Therefore, he's saying that wherever you go, it moves faster than air. It is there where air can travel, fire can travel. It's everywhere. That is this grand idea. It's a wonderful idea. And this saying Taya Prasiddhaya Taitriya Shrutya is quoting from the Taitriya Upanishad. Shrutya iti karana, and that is these are. Then this word you might underline and write it. There is a bit of confusion here. Bimudhaha, you can say that is somebody dumbfounded. No, here the interpretation is slightly different. What is it? Bimudhena. What is this word? Vigata Mudha Bhava Yasma Saha Bimudhaha. We have to do Anvaya like this. The one from where Mudha Bhava means the ignorance has been removed. V upasarga can mean anything. So the person who has left behind ignorance, that means he has got liberated. Bimudhena, here the person who has renounced, forsaken, has kind of shaken off overcome his ignorance, faulty understanding. He is bimudhena, by him, bimudhena, bininitnam, nirnitam, vishesha rupena nirnitam. Is beautifully explained in the Upanishads and by great acharyas who have spent millions of years as a kind of tradition of meditation. They have reached these conclusions that what? That this Atma is different from this Sadavikari, this body. Katham. Katham sya deha kapuman. When all the acharyas of the tradition tell us that the body cannot be the self, how can you confuse the body as the self? That is the same old question he's repeating to drive home hammer home the point. So we have done this. Verse number 34. Let's do one more verse. We have a little time left. Na kevalam Anaya ekaya sritya, not by just one Upanishadic statement, the Vininitam, not by mention or testified by just one verse. Kintu anyapi iti aha. It's also there are other references I can quote for you. Therefore, he is now going to this Purusha Sukta. Purusha Sukta, we sort of chant it. A lot of people kind of use Purusha Sukta, including Dr. Ambedkar, saying that the Varnashram system and everything and the attribute, okay? Because they said this grand Purusha out of which everything is created. So out of these hands or the arms, the Kshatriyas came, from the head, the Brahmins came, and then from the thighs, the Vaishyas, the traders came, and from the feet, the Sudras came. And obviously, now there is a classification, lower and higher, these ideas. And then all these the animals, the birds, these cornfields, everything have come out of that Purusha, the grand thing. But if you flip this whole storyline, instead of getting stuck with these faulty understanding of the details, think about it. And there are other people who try to misunderstand it, that don't you think when men and women have come out of this Purusha, they are all brothers and sisters, and marriage between man and woman are kind of incest? These are the problems with what I say, literal interpretation of the scriptural sentences. There is a big danger. Sri Aurobindo has beautifully mentioned that in The Secret of the Vedas. I'm mentioning this because you would also be hit up on by somebody who will raise these questions. These are insights. And if you try to literally interpret these sentences, you will not go anywhere close to the truth. You have to access the insight by meditating on it. What he is trying to say in this Purusha Sukta is, out of that grand consciousness called the Purusha, the Ishvara, this whole universe has manifested. We are all one. Obviously, all of us are brothers and sisters. We can say that we are all siblings. We all say we are children of God. So you have this kind of faulty interpretation. They would say that then marriage, so all our brothers, sisters, how can you marry? These are stupid ways of interpreting texts. All of us are essentially one, appearing as different, like water bubbles on the same water surface. You have the waves, and then you have the water bubbles. There is another interpretation of the same Vedantic thing. Our self, again, is divided into three types. The ocean is that Kutastha, Paramarthika self, Paramarthika Jiva, Kutastha, that Ghatakas. The waves, the Taranga, that is the Jagrat Kala. When you're waking up, you are having the Vyavaharik Atma. And then what are the Budbud, the Fena, the foam, the water bubbles? What do you have during the dream state? One kalpanika, one imaginary self who is playing games, who is arguing, who is maybe moving around in a garden, relishing his or her time. All these are imaginary things. So again, compared, but one thing is same. It's all water. The ocean is water, the waves are water, and the foam and the water bubbles are water. These are different upadhis. Jalasaya upadhi, that Kutastha. Then Taranga upadhi, wave upadhi, You have this Jagrata Avastha, Vyavaharika Atma, Vyavaharika Jiva, and you have the Pratibhasika Jiva, the imaginary self that is there in the dreams. These are ways in which we make sense of a very complex reality called the self at the individual level, which is described as the Jiva. Jiva and Ishvara are ultimately pure consciousness. The Ghatakasa and the Mahakasa is space only. So we have to all the time deal with the details, keeping in mind the ultimate reality of oneness of our consciousness. That is what is the greatest advice given by the scriptures to us. That is what is going to liberate us, as they're saying this. And what is mentioning here, we have another, yeah, we have 3 minutes. We'll be able to do it. So, Sarvang Purusha Eva Iti, let's do Ucharana of the verse number 35 then. Sarvang Purusha Eveti Sukte Purusha Sangjite Apyuchyate Yataha Srutya Katham Syadeha Kaha Puman. Very briefly, he's saying in the Purusha Sukta, everything has come out of that Purusha, that Atma. Sarvang Purusha Eva, everything is verily Purusha. Iti Sukte. What Sukta is it? There are different Suktas in the Vedas. He's saying Purusha Sangjite, that Sukta which has an adjective called Purusha means Purusha Sukta. In the Purusha Sukta, everything is referred to as Purusha. Born out of Purusha is verily Purusha. Api Uchyate. This is also mentioned there. Yataha. Therefore, because it is described like this, Shrutya, it's mentioned like Purusha Sukta is part of the Vedas. Katham Syad Dehaka Puman. So how can you have these confusion? How can you again reduce the self to this physical body? So that is how we have come to the close of the session. Any questions you have, because we have 2 minutes? Any questions anybody has? Any doubts?